Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to book reviews. So, today we're going to do this, Hyperion by Dan Simmons. So, on the world called Hyperion, beyond the laws of the hegemony of man, there waits the creature called the Shrike. There are those who worship it, there are those who fear it, and there are those who have vowed to destroy it. In the valley of the time tombs, where huge, brooding structures move backwards through time, the Shrike waits for them all. On the eve of Armageddon, with the entire galaxy at war, 7 pilgrims set forth on a final voyage to Hyperion, seeking the answers to the unsolved riddles of their lives. Each carries a desperate hope and a terrible secret, and one may hold the fate of humanity in his hands. A stunning tour de force filled with transcendent awe and wonder. Hyperion is a masterwork of science fiction that resonates with excitement and invention, the first volume in a remarkable new science fiction epic by the multiple award-winning author of The Hollow Man. You may be familiar with The Hollow Man from I think they made a Kevin Bacon movie version of it, like evil, invisible man movie. I'm assuming they're the same thing. They might not be, I don't know. If they're not, then put it in the comments or something. Yell at me and say, why don't you do your research? Because I don't do any research. I really don't. Like, very rarely. We have the 3-body problem trilogy coming up in a while, and I'm going to have to look up a lot of names and stuff, and kind of things that go along with that, because I'll have translator names, and the writer is Chinese and stuff, I believe. So, yeah, and the first book in that trilogy, but I read the whole trilogy, but the first book won the Hugo Award. So, yeah. In fact, I believe, if my count, what's in my hand and what's in the ground is right, after this, we should have 6 more Hugo Award winners. So yeah, Hyperion. Now the idea is that yes, there's this planet where there's this creature called the Shrike, and these time tombs, and they're buildings that move backwards through time, and people make pilgrimages there. But the time tombs are opening, and so like the whole planet has kind of been shut down to these pilgrimages, and this one last pilgrimage of 7 people is going. And you go, and when pilgrimages go, I think everybody ends up being killed except one person, and that person is granted their desire. Or something crazy like that. I haven't read this in a while. But I will tell you this. So then the story is these people are traveling, and they sit down, and they decide, hey, we have to figure out why were we all allowed to go? Like, what's going on? Like, this planet is closed to everybody. Like, this seems like a super secret kind of deal. Like, why are we on our way to this place? What we should do is, while we're traveling, we should all tell our stories. And they kind of put this to a vote. And so then the book is all of their stories. And let me just tell you this. Their stories are amazing. Like, they're so amazing. This book kind of reads like somebody wrote, like, 5 or 6 really amazing science fiction short stories, and then went, why don't I, like, make a wraparound to this? Except one of them is so entrenched they're all so entrenched in the plot, like, because they all involve the Shrike on some level, right? Like, one of the guy who the book is written from the point of view is, like, a politician that has dealt with this planet before, and probably could have been, like, the council in charge of this planet and decided not to. And so they all arrive, and they're all traveling to the time tombs. And the second book picks up directly where this leaves off, and I haven't read that book. So I'm just talking about this book because I really loved the stories, but the overarching kind of... What I did was I went and I read a plot synopsis of the second book and went, I don't know that I necessarily need to get into all that. So I just didn't like the way things kind of went. But, like, the first story in here, if you read the first Pilgrim story and go, I don't want to read this book anymore, then there's no hope for you. There's no hope for you. It's so good. It's so horrifyingly good. And then you're like, oh, are the other ones going to be horrifyingly good? And they all are. They all are. They're all, like, they're written, this is one of 2 science fiction novels that I've read that I think can just as easily be classified as a horror novel. Like, I think you could just as easily just go like, oh, that's clearly a horror novel, and throw this in, like, the horror novel section. And the other one being Annihilation, by the way, like, which is just raw. But we're talking about Hyperion today. So this one in 1990. I have that right. I write it on the inside, in the inside cover. So, like, this one has this is for Ted. So I should say the text is really small, and this is a heck of a read. It's almost 500 pages. So we're gonna just pick up. They're talking about, like, at one point, an eccentric guy that was referred to as the Sad King Billy founded a city of artists on the planet of Hyperion, and it was wiped out. And one of the pilgrims is a resident of that place. Like, he saw these things, and he he knows what happened, and he's going back. There are, by the way, like I said, every person's story in here is magnificent. The stuff about them traveling it's okay, but, like, the stuff about, like, the people's story, oh, so good. So notes for a sketch of Sad King Billy. His Royal Highness King William the 23rd, Sovereign Lord of the Kingdom of Windsor in exile, looks a bit like a wax candle of a man who has been left on a hot stove. His long hair runs in limp rivulets to slumped shoulders, while the furrows on his brow trickle downward to the tributaries of wrinkles around the basset hound eyes, and then run southward again through folds and frown lines to the maze of wattles in neck and jowls. King Billy is said to remind anthropologists of the worry dolls of the outback Kinshasa, to make Zen Gnostics recall the pitiful Buddha after the temple fire in Taizin, and to send media historians rushing to the archives to check photos of an ancient flat film movie actor named Charles Lawton. None of these references mean anything to me. I look at King Billy and think of my long-dead tutor, Don Balthazar, after a week-long binge. Sad King Billy's reputation for gloominess is exaggerated. He often laughs. It is merely his misfortune that his peculiar form of laughter makes most people think he is sobbing. A man cannot help his physiognomy. We'll go with physiognomy. But in His Highness's case, the entire persona tends to suggest either buffoon or victim. He dresses, if that can be the word, in something approaching a constant state of anarchy, defying the taste and color sense of his android servants, so that on some days he clashes with himself and his environment simultaneously. Nor is his appearance limited to sartorial chaos. King William moves in a permanent sphere of dishabille, his fly unsealed, his velvet cape torn and tattered, and drawing crumbs magnetically from the floor, his left sleeve ruffled twice as long as the right, which in turn looks as if it has been dipped in jam. You get the idea. For all this, Sad King Billy has an insightful mind, a passion for the arts and literature, which has not been equaled since the true Renaissance days of old Earth. In some ways, King Billy is the fat child, with his face eternally pressed to the candy store window. He loves and appreciates fine music, but cannot produce it. A connoisseur of ballet and all things graceful, His Highness is a klutz, a moving series of pratfalls and comic bits of clumsiness. A passionate reader, unerring poetry critic, and patron of forensics, King Billy combines a stutter in his verbal expression with a shyness which will not allow him to show his verse or prose to anyone else. A lifelong bachelor now entering his 60th year, King Billy inhabits the tumble-down palace and 2,000 square mile kingdom as if it were another suit of rumpled royal clothes. Anecdotes abound. One of the famous oil painters, who King Billy supports, finds His Majesty walking head down, hands clasped behind him, one foot on the garden path and one in the mud, obviously lost in thought. The artist hails his patron. Sad King Billy looks up, blinks, looks around as if awakening from a long nap. "Excuse me," His Highness says to the bemused painter, "but could you please tell me, was I headed towards the palace or away from the palace?" "Towards the palace, Your Majesty," replies the artist. "Oh, good, sighs the king. Then I've had lunch." Like, so fun. And the fact that Dan Simmons could put that in the middle of this horror novel is fantastic. And it is that. Now, Hyperion, like I said, I liked Hyperion as an exercise and as kind of these character studies. I really loved it. Now, I didn't like the overarching plot line about the Shrike quite enough to want to continue it into a second book. But I did love the Pilgrim stories. I loved it. I loved them quite a bit. Do I have any doubts that the second book is good? No, I don't. The second book is probably good. I may eventually read it. It just falls in kind of a lower, for me it falls like to a slightly lower priority than kind of other things that are on my list right now. Now, that being said, yeah, I think Hyperion is a must-read. I think it's an absolute must-read. It's just it gets mentioned a lot. It's fundamental kind of in these lists of science fiction books. I'd heard about it a lot. A friend had recommended it to me before I ever picked it up, and here it is, and it's great. It's great. Like I said, and I don't know what that noise was, but the Pilgrim stories are amazing, and the Pilgrim stories are amazing. The overarching plot line is okay, but like I said, the Pilgrim stories, the characters are so well done. They're so amazingly made that kind of like when you read their stories, you are really transported. And that's the thing too, is that their stories are so disparately their own, that, I mean, some of them are far older than others and come from different planets, so all the stories just kind of jump you to this different setting and kind of let you see those things, right? And that's really good too. It lends a lot of variety to the novel. And that was what I found. What I found was that I couldn't stop reading the personal stories, and when the personal stories were done, I couldn't get to the next one fast enough. And that's like a huge deal, right? Like, there's a really great rhythm in kind of that like, it's, I don't know how to, like, I mean, it's framing device like A story, B story, C story, D story kind of format. And, I don't know that you're supposed to care about the framing device as much. Maybe in the second novel, that's the point, right? Is you're really supposed to care about the framing device because everything's going to come together. But in this novel, you're definitely supposed to care about the A story, B story, C story, and D story. And Dan Simmons nails those. He just nails them. Just blows them out of the water. They are so good. They are so entertaining, and like I said, they're kind of horrifying. Like, none of these people are on this pilgrimage because their life has worked out happily. That's not what a pilgrimage like this is about. They're all these kind of tragic figures for these very different reasons. And the different reasons are kind of horrifying. One pilgrim is just carrying around a baby, and everybody's just like, oh, like, does this baby count as one person? Like, because then we have too many people. Like, it has to be in prime numbers, like, so there's 7 of them. And, they're like wondering about, and the reason that guy's bringing a baby on the pilgrimage is so nuts. Like, it's so, you would never guess it, and then you get to it and you're like, oh my, that's so horrifying. It's so horrifying. So yeah, like, Hyperion, like, if you like a kind of darker science fiction with kind of, using science fiction to kind of show you the possibilities of tragedy in the future, like, right here, Hyperion. So, when we come back, depending on what the noise level around here stays at, we might be doing another session, but when we come back, more of this stuff, more Hugo Award winners. Bye, everybody.